It's great that we have these long evenings to fly at the moment. However, not so great that due to the coronavirus pandemic, many airfields that might otherwise remain open late aren't doing so. So I'm having to find interesting trips to do that don't involve landing away. One I thought of doing was to go over my old haunts. My son went to university in Bath and I went to Bristol, so I thought I'd fly over them to see if I could recognise any of them from a very different perspective. This was about 6 in the evening from our home airfield at Membury. There was virtually no wind, absolutely perfect flying conditions. I've recently started mounting a GoPro on our left wing strut, as the visibility is much better than the cockpit, although I'd ideally like to run two cameras so I can also get a cockpit perspective with proper audio. The GoPro is on a swivel mount, so I can point it straight ahead, like I have here, or rotate it by 30-degree increments so I can, for example, point it straight at the pilot. Great for flying with outdoors. Our favourite runway at Membury, 13, so wide you could land on it sideways. Very forgiving. And also great for practicing fan stops and dead sticks, especially when one is trying to work towards a Calibri silver badge, lest one's wife get there first. Membury may not be a particularly pretty airfield, but it's got some really interesting history, dating back to the Second World War. And for new pilots who aren't fans of crosswinds, we are somewhat spoilt for choice from all of those runways. The downside is that one can get confused, especially as the circuit directions in Poolers don't actually match what we do in practice. So as we turn west towards Bath and Bristol, here's what I'd planned. When I say plan, it was of course done over many hours, with detailed calculations, alternate airfields, weight and balance, fuel plans, all that kind of stuff. Just like I'm sure we all do in a microlight that doesn't seem to use any more fuel than my car, around 12 litres an hour. Okay, it doesn't go very fast, but you get a better view this way, and you get to learn the meaning of patience as well. So my plan was to head direct to Bath, give Bristol Radar a call for basic service and zone transmit 10 miles before their CTA, which they approved, and then follow the River Avon from Bath to Bristol, via the docks and the suspension bridge, and then out to Avonmouth, where I'd turn right, head up the coast for a little bit, past the gas venting area you can see there, and then basically follow the M4 all the way home. So if my iPad runs out of battery, I'll be fine. In the distance there we can start to see a big hole in the ground, which is Bath. Looks rather like a huge crater, to be honest. Coming up now to Bath University, on the hills to the southeast of the city centre. You can get a sense now of the climb that many students will be facing every morning, possibly worse than the one we had at Bristol. In the distance we can see the Bristol Channel, and beyond that what I referred to in a previous aerial conversation with my wife as that high stuff over there. That's the polite version. We're over the city centre now, heading west-northwest, looking to pick up the River Avon, which is pretty narrow at this stage, so hard to find. We're getting some interesting thermals rising up from time to time. I was at an altitude of about 2,500 feet here, so not quite yet in the Class D, but I would be glad of the clearance from Bristol radar to enter later on, when it came to crossing the suspension bridge and the downs. At this stage we're over Keynsham, on the southeast outskirts of Bristol, looking towards Knoll. In the distance we can make out Avonmouth on the coast, and ahead of us is the city centre. Although it would be really nice to make a low pass over the city centre, we're not going to, as we need to be able to glide clear in case of engine failure. Shame. Just ahead of us here we can see Bristol Templemead Station, a place I passed through so many times in my years at Bristol, usually with my push bike and often with a guitar on my back. We can also see the River Avon clearly highlighted with the evening sun, looking absolutely lovely. It shows us the way to the suspension bridge where we're going next. Down there we have the SS Great Britain and also an interesting museum called the Underfall Yard, well known to fans of Big Train. We also have a very steep hill, not very cyclist friendly, called Constitution Hill. In the distance we can see the Welsh coast almost all the way to Cardiff Airport. I now take the aircraft down to about 1,200 feet to get a good view of the suspension bridge. There's a great view of the gorge after that, going all the way out to Avonmouth, and I turn right now to overfly the Downs, one of my favourite places as a student. I'd been asked by Bristol radar to let them know when I passed a bridge, so I now do that. They then asked me to keep the squawk code and let them know when changing frequency. I'm heading north now to an area called Stoke Bishop, where I lived for 3 years in Hartbaker Hall. We'll shortly be able to see Wills Hall and Hartbaker at the bottom right of the picture. It's changed a bit since I lived there. I went back a few years ago and it seemed almost unrecognisable from my days as a student. We're now turning back to the northwest to follow the Avon out to the coast, roughly towards Portishead. It turns out I've been really lucky with my timing. The evening sun is lighting up all the water, making it really easy to see. It's about time I started my turn towards home, so I'll leave behind the Avon now and head north. There's a gas venting area marked on my Skydemon map, so my intention is to loop around the top of it and then broadly follow the M4 home to Membury. In the distance we can see the old and new bridges over the Bristol Channel. I'm also aware that I lost a lot of height for my sightseeing over the bridge and the Downs, so I start to climb up again. can now see below us Severn Beach, the end of a small branch line that runs out from Templemead Station that I once visited a long time ago. So for my trip so far through Bath and Bristol, I got a clearance for zone transit from Bristol radar, but didn't strictly speaking need it, as I don't think at any stage I went into controlled airspace. It was, however, still better for me to do this, because it was one less thing to worry about. Especially over the city centre and over the bridge, the Class D goes down to 1500 feet, and I was only barely beneath it. I knew that I had the freedom to climb if I needed it, so I didn't feel trapped by the terrain. For those into their trains, I'm omitting nothing here, we can see here the main rail line from Bristol Parkway entering the tunnel that takes it over to South Wales. Something to do with the first breather, I think, if I've understood the song reference correctly. That very pretty junction down there is the M4-M5 junction. I'm not saying I'm OCD, but I do appreciate its symmetry. The M4 dips a bit to the south here, we'll just carry on east. At this point we say goodbye to Bristol radar and hello to London Information to look after us on our trip back east. I have to say that although it's pretty, this isn't my favourite place to fly over, because if I had to put down in a field, it would be hard to find one without an electricity pylon in the middle of it. I mean, just look at this aviation chart and see how many there are marked in this area. You have to ask, what were they smoking, or drinking, or both, when they designed this layout? Look at all those squiggly lines. I suppose there must be some logic to it. After a few minutes, we come across those well-known locations of Nibley, Engine Common, Yate and Chipping Sodbury. No, I'd never heard of them either, to be honest. The airfield we see in front of us now was opened in June 1937 as RAF Hallavington, mostly used for training purposes, and it was transferred to the British Army in 1992, although continued in use for RAF gliding until the whole thing was closed and sold to Dyson in 2016. Regrettably, my GoPro battery will shortly be running out. The last video clip, the one after this one, is corrupted because the battery ran out. So this is the last working video clip that I have from this trip. I've since ordered a battery pack, so hopefully in future I'll avoid having my videos truncated through lack of power. I think that the video footage from the external camera is working really well. I think I need to work now on integrating footage from both an internal and an external camera for extra variety. I hope you've enjoyed our little trip down memory lane. Thanks for watching.